Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you are all doing well today, enjoying the United free weekend, as there have been so many recently. But yeah, I hope you're all having a good day. I hope you're all having a nice time. I hope you're doing well. It's been rather quiet. Was not really prepared for this long break, to be honest. Next week is going to be a little bit tough. I'm not sure exactly what to talk about, what to say, but there are a few things to discuss today. We're going to talk about this new hire from City, and I want to debate a couple of points on that. Talk about the links to Tavernier, the midfielder slash winger, which I feel like we've got a lot of those at Bournemouth, of course, as well as Lacey back in training, which is good news. And then these mids in Spain, this little bit of a tease, a little bit of bait about these mids in Spain, coming to us from, of course, Andy Mitten, a very of course, the reliable journalist. But listen, if Andy Mitten is allowed to bait, so am I. So it's Camavinga on the cover. Is that actually bait, though? We'll talk about that. We will talk about that. Is it actually bait at this point in time? Because stories are flying, as expected, that Real Madrid are making moves for some big midfielders this summer. And I did warn you that might be the case. And this might have something actually in it. But we'll get to that. Thank you for the donation, DB. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you here, as always, DB Cooper. I hope you're well. I hope you're doing all right. Have you been under the weather today? I think it's withdrawal. Yeah. How was your day away from us? Good. Busy, but good. Very, very busy though. It's been interesting. Hello. The bait is real. No Camavinga paying premium prices for Madrid spare parts, physical Balek's quality and technical ability. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I get it. I understand the concern that some people will raise on, of course, purchasing players, leftovers or players that Madrid no longer want. We'll get to that. I do want to talk about Camavinga sort of at the back end of the show, as well as these midfielders. Maybe not the back, maybe like in the middle. I don't know how long we'll do this one for today if I don't find something to blab about for an extended period beyond the basic obvious bits of news and things like that. But we will definitely get to that. And it is worth talking about. It is absolutely worth talking about. Pablo Barrios rumors also circulating. Naveen, where have you seen it? Because as far as I know, I'm the only person that has mentioned it so far. And if it is going somewhere else, I would love to see that. Because, as I've shared in the past, when I come up with the lists, the names, I tend to find the bigger lists that I know have been looked at for United, and I'm often relying on other people who are kind of reporting the follow-ups on those players to know who are being the major targets and things like that, in that we're actually progressing on. So if you've got links, if it's actually out there somewhere, I'd be curious to see it as well, because Boris is a rather interesting one. But anyways, let's first talk about this story here, and which is a good one, I think, brought to us from Training Ground Gurus, actually, who had it first. I don't know if you don't follow this account, you may not know, but they're like not just like a genuine account. This isn't like an ITK thing. Like, this is a full on like business. They do all sorts of stuff, like conventions and stuff and everything. It's a good account to follow. They always have tons of really interesting content. It's where I ended up reading some stuff from coaches and other analysts, and I tend to read a lot of stuff that this place says, because there's always so many really interesting insights into football there from someone who's actually like a professional in the industry. Anyway, he brought this exclusive yesterday that Darren Hughes has joined Manchester United in the new role of head of academy football development. He spent the last 12 years at Man City, and before that, apparently, he was at Liverpool, and I want to say somewhere else before that. but held a variety of roles, including head of coaching and head of individual player development. So this is, to me, a really, really interesting story for a couple of reasons. Number one is that, you know, I see people talk about things like, oh man, more City hires, you know, jobs for the boys, people that they know and all that. But like, yeah, man, like, yes, jobs for the boys, jobs for the boys, jobs for people who are coming from the most successful club of the last 12 years in the Premier League, jobs for people who have won a treble, jobs for people who have won 5 out of 6 titles, jobs for those guys. Absolutely. Sign me up. Okay. Sign me up for more of that, of what built City, because regardless of their cheating financially, okay, that's a totally different question. That's a totally different equation. It's a totally different situation. Money and funneling money in and all of that is one thing. Okay. That's somebody's job. Somebody's doing that. Somebody does that. They funnel money in and build City up to be able to spend when they shouldn't be able to spend. Okay. You still have to spend well. You still have to spend right. You still have to develop players properly. You still have to recruit properly. You still have to hire properly. You still have to do all of that properly. Okay. And I think the important part to note about this is that, look, whatever happened, look at, for example, Chelsea. They've spent $2 billion over the last, what? And, you know, and where are they? What are they doing? What have they accomplished? Virtually nothing, you know? What have we accomplished in those years, spending over $1 billion on transfers under the Glazers? We spent money. We spent as much or more than City for quite a long time. We had a bigger wage bill. We had more money spent on transfers. What did it get us? Nothing. It's not just about the money. It's about spending right and building a club correctly and doing all of that. You know, there are football. You know what I mean? It's football. It's football. That's the reality of it. It's like football. You still have to get right. No matter how much money is there, you still have to get it right in order to win. We've seen so many clubs spend a lot of money and be ultimately very, very unsuccessful. So I'm not particularly bothered by that, but I see another misunderstanding, or I guess I would say misinterpretation of the situation, which is that people are asking, what City's academy isn't developed particularly well. Yes, but he was not City's academy development. I think because he was hired to be United's head of academy development and all of that, people are getting confused between the role that he held. At City, his job recently was head of coaching and head of individual player development. He was not the academy guy. I mean, the picture that's posted there from this account is him working with Gundogan. You know, that's not the academy. But look, at City, he had a variety of roles, including head of coaching and head of individual player development. Now, I would definitely say that City are well coached. I would definitely say that City have had plenty of good senior players come through and turn into absolute monsters at City and all of that. You know what I mean? So, you know, you have to bear in mind it's an interesting move, because to me what it indicates is that United are looking to bring in somebody who understands coaching, who can develop coaching, but also player development, and that is his big thing, and then taking him and putting him in the academy. Why? Because we need more player development in our academy. If you look at it, right? We've got a lot of talents in the academy, but we have seen this for some time that it is a bit stalled. It is a bit stagnant, and it does sort of like peter out with a lot of them, where you get these talents, they're playing, they're looking good, and then it's like, what comes next? Where's the next jump? Where's that jump from kids football to men's football? Where's that jump in their player development to the next level? And I believe that is essentially the goal of this hire, is to have somebody with experience, of course, in the men's game and developing players and coaching and all of that, that can can be in that area in the academy level to work on player development, and improve players. Because I think many times we've had, look at Cheeto right now, right? It's like he came in, looked like a top talent, and he's doing well last few games, right? But you get a lot of ups and downs, even with really good talents between, when they're hitting like 16, 18, 19 and those ages, and you need it. You know what I mean? I swear I've had more ads, James. YouTube's getting wild. People have been telling me that prior to joining, there's a lot more ads than ever. And I got to say, like, I know YouTube have changed quite a few things, because when I watch things myself, I see more ads than ever. And I haven't changed anything on my end. But I also know that it's hurting. It's definitely hurting. I see a lot more bouncing, and then I see, other things like that as well. But yeah, that's what I see the idea of this is from, is taking these young talents who are maybe stagnant a bit at United and bringing things to the next level, bringing them up, to where they need to be, to where they should be, bringing them up a bit. And so the hire makes sense to me on that front, and I think that it's fine. You watched the video and got 6 unskippable ads in 9 minutes the other day. Yeah, they've definitely changed something, and it's hurting. Wrexham have scored. 3-3, 10 men. Wrexham have scored. Sorry, I'm watching Chelsea Wrexham in the background. 3-3. Wrexham. Come on, get it to pens. Holy. 10 men Wrexham. Let's go. Okay. But yes, sorry. People have been, I'm telling you from the creator perspective, I don't know what they've done, but something recently has hurt. Like, actually hurt. It's a little worrying to me, given, he's going to be offsides. He's offsides, He's going to be offsides. It's not going to count. He's going to be offsides. Unfortunately, they got you to pay premium. Hate the ads so much, though. And I think that's what they're trying to do. I believe that what YouTube are trying to do is, well, actually, there's a foot back. Might not be offsides. But anyway, I believe what YouTube are trying to do is is they do these pushes where they do these really, like, robust ad stretches. And I think the goal is push people into signing up for premium, and then they scale it back, because, premium is what they want. It's the more consistent revenue stream for YouTube, is to get as many people as possible into premium. And look, I still get paid by premium as well, right? I still get paid from premium too, like a portion, right, of it. That's how it still works. But I think they prefer that to ads. Why do I say offsides? Because it's offsides. I don't know. Offsides. It's a possessive word. That's all. I don't know. Yeah, but it is offside. Anyway, is what it is. Damn, thought they'd had it. But regardless, looking at this, like, we're developing. God, VAR have just given the red, all sorts of shit, stuff like that. Blah. Anyway, whatever. So that's the hire. That's the hire. That's what we're looking at in terms of why they're making hires like this. The next thing is an interesting one. We've had a link to Tavernier, Marcus Tavernier, not at Bournemouth, 26 years old. This is what his kind of numbers look like. He's on, like, I think he's had, like, every season he has like 9 goals and assists. I'll be honest with you guys. Oh yeah, hold on. That was 24, 25. There. He's pretty much the same player every year. He takes penalties, does not score a lot of goals, doesn't really do much, and I'm not sure I believe that one. Now, it comes from David Kent at the Daily Mail. Now, if the name David Kent sounds made up, I would suggest you look into that a little bit. And you might find Kent isn't a reason. I wouldn't put much stock in this story at this point in time. That's all I would say on that. I don't think it's a serious situation. Or a serious interest. I think it's something somebody heard and nobody wanted to put their name to, and then it goes out in a story like that. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm not big on that one. It's just he's just an okay player. It doesn't particularly make sense to me. Now, if we're looking at Tavernier because we're looking at, hey, if we're going to sign a winger or an extra forward this summer, we're really only looking to spend like 30 million or something as a depth winger signing. In general, I'm actually cool with that. Because personally, I would actually rather us go and spend a small amount on winger. I mean, we've talked about this so much over the last weeks and months. Like, the more the season goes on, the less I'm thinking, oh, we need a winger so bad. And the more I'm thinking, yeah, get me fullbacks, center backs, and midfielders, not in that order, but get me all three of those positions before we do anything else, in the market, because I just don't see the point. So yeah, I don't think there's too much stock to take in that story from what I know. I don't think it's a serious interest. I don't think it's a serious player that United are trying to sign or anything like that. So yeah, just wanted to mention it. All right, just tweeting this out. So, yeah, not particularly sorted about that. Your order would be sort the midfield, then center back, then fullback, then a winger. Agreed. The one to sign from Bournemouth is this. There's Krupi and there's is that Bournemouth, right? Krupi and there's a few others I would look to, but I don't know. I just don't think we should spend a big amount of money on a winger in general. But I'd be happy if we're looking at other. I'd be happy if we're looking at other ones. I would be quite happy if we're looking at other names. But look, let's talk about the midfield, because I just tweeted that out. I want to talk about the midfield now. I do. I definitely want to speak about the midfield, about these eyebrow raisers, right? These eyebrow raisers. This is this is just somebody tweeted it. I'm not going to play the video or anything, but essentially, just so you know where this comes from, because someone brought this yesterday, mentioned it, and then I saw the clip afterwards of Andy Mitten saying it on Talk of the Devils, and about that United are looking at some midfielders that would raise some eyebrows located in Spain. Now, it's important to note that we're not talking about Spanish eyebrow raisers. Yeah, they were not talking about Spanish midfielders, meaning he didn't say they were nationally Spanish, which makes me think it's not a Spanish national, actually, but that's a total assumption. But it's more because I was thinking about that, right? And I was thinking, if it was a Spanish midfielder, would they say a midfielder in Spain, or would they say Spanish midfielder? And if it was a midfielder playing, I'm being overly Muppet on this, because I don't know. It's not like I can say for sure who I know that Andy is specifically referring to. I can only say what I know. But I'm thinking the way you said it means it's a player in Spain, not a player who's Spanish. That's my interpretation of the bait. Man, that was really close. To me, it means big names. Yes, exactly that. Eyebrow raising to me means big names, because look, there's a lot of names we're looking at in Spain in general. We've looked at Javi Guerra at Valencia. Well, that's not going to raise any eyebrows. We've looked at Casado at Barcelona. Could be an interesting name, but would that really be eyebrow raising? Casado, he's a bit lightweight. He's a bit, I don't know. He's not particularly, to me, like he's not a Gavi or a Pedri. Now, Gavi or Pedri would certainly be eyebrow raising, but I doubt that there's a universe where either one of those is even remotely considered. So, yeah, Pedri, but there's just no way, right? Like, I'm not saying we wouldn't be interested. Of course, everybody in the world would be interested in Pedri if he's available, but that's never going to happen. You're going to have to pay $500 million to get these types of players. They're not going to sell Pedri. You know what I mean? So that can't be the case. Casado is a bit of a surplus. Casado is a bit of a fringe player. I don't think that that's eyebrow raising. So who does it lead you to? I think eyebrow raising, based on knowing a little bit about Andy Mitten, is big. I think what he's hinting at is like it's a big name because that's just the way that he is. I don't think it'd be surprising. I think he's talking big name because I don't think Andy Mitten would consider surprising to be anything. I think Andy Mitten would consider it to be big, and I think that I think he's talking about big. And for me, there's 3 players that fit this qualification. And we have definitely been considering and looking at all 3 of them between now and in the past, and are continuing to look at them. One is Pablo Barrios. As I've said before, United have looked at Pablo Barrios. I said this, I think I first linked him back in November, that Pablo Barrios is really, 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 really good, right? Pablo Barrios is top. He's an excellent player. I mean, if you want to look at his stats, by the way, Pablo Barrios is the green. And if you want to make comparisons to players in here, he's the only player in this green on these charts, on these pizza charts, he's probably got the best in the entirety of Europe that I've seen, Pablo Barrios. And I've watched him since I've linked him, and I thought, yeah, I would take him in half a heartbeat. Would he leave Atletico? I have no idea on that front. How much would he cost? Chelsea have scored again. Probably $100 million. Maybe more. Would Athletic even sell? No idea, right? But that would certainly raise some eyebrows. He's a top player. He's a big part of Atletico's team. He's really good, and we've definitely kept an eye on him. And he's also very, very much, I would say, exactly what we should be looking to get into our midfield. So if eyes turn to interest, Pablo Barrios would certainly raise some eyebrows because he is a huge, big money midfielder from Atleti. That's one. The other one is if Simeone leaves or something. Yeah, who knows, right? The other ones are of course Tchouaméni and Camavinga at Madrid. Now, in both instances, I remember really funny, and for those of you who are gray-haired Muppets like myself, who've been around the community a long time, one of our most original sources from way back, who I think, disappeared, lost the source at some point, all of that. But one of our first actually decent ones from like 2020, I think it was, one day said to me, United are looking at some kid in France named Aurélien Tchouaméni. And I looked at his name and I was like, who? Who the hell is that? Like, what, that's you see the name for the first time. I'm already bad with pronunciations. And I was like, who is this player? Like some random player from France, like with a name I can't even pronounce. And I was very doubtful. But come a year later, everybody's trying to buy Aurélien Tchouaméni. United were in a strong race to try to get Tchouaméni. And obviously ends up going to Madrid. And then Camavinga, we were hot on. We were right in on. I remember sitting, not SpoofX, no. I remember sitting and watching. Because I was worried at the time. I was being told at the time that he wasn't going to pick us. And his agent, who was at the time Jonathan Barnett, head of CAA Base, my favorite agency on earth. Anyway, has a different agent now, but still at CAA Base, but a different agent. Were playing us at the time. They were playing us. I remember that CAA Base and were playing us. And I remember watching a video of Fabrizio, who was constantly, talking about Camavinga and saying, oh, he could still go anywhere. He could still go anywhere. He could still choose anywhere. And I remember him leaving the live streams to take phone calls from Jonathan Barnett at the time, okay, about the situation. And I was like, because I was being told by a source that I had that he was not choosing us. And I was like, this isn't happening, unfortunately, guys. It's just not. But it was, I remember everybody was still very, very hopeful. And of course he went to Madrid. So I'm wary in a sense in that respect, because they played us. Both of them. Both of them turned down United to join Madrid, Tchouaméni and Camavinga. But both are very, very good midfielders. And I understand the doubts that people have right now. It was a 30 million release clause from what I know, or it was a 30 million agreed fee. And the fee was no issue. It was all about the player's choice. It had nothing to do with the fee at that point, in terms of where he went. But we were ready to buy him. But look, this is the thing. I know there's a lot of people who have a lot of doubts. You remember someone in the chat said back in the day we don't need Tchouaméni because we have too many midfielders. Yeah. A lot of people have been talking about Madrid and saying they wouldn't take these players and blah, blah, blah. They've got doubts about them. Madrid stink, this and that. Here's the thing, guys, though, that I gotta back up and say. First of all, a couple of things, okay? We got Varane and Casemiro from Madrid. Now, first of all, it was a different Madrid. That was a Madrid moving out of their most successful era of all time, right? The Cristiano Ronaldo era. I think it's their most successful era, right? The Zidane, the three-peat, the Champions, at least in the Champions League. Maybe they've had better runs in La Liga, but in the Champions League, right? It was a bit of the end of their most successful time, and they were cleaning house. But listen for a moment, okay? Much as I maligned Casemiro, that is in the present. Make no mistake, both Casemiro and Rafael Varane were two of the best players in their position in world football, if not the best. Okay? If not the best. And yeah, they were so late on when they were aging and things like that. And the injuries started catching up and the age catches up and blah, 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 right? But there is a quality of player that makes it at Madrid. And it is a factor that you have to look at. The standards are insanely high. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that, but you have to realize these guys have won Champions League. You're calling in Camavinga and Tchouaméni, you're calling guys who have won Champions Leagues and La Ligas flops, but they've won Champions League. Like, they've been there for Champions Leagues wins. At least one, right? They've been in it. They're still in it. And I understand it's a different league, but they're not flops. They're not flops. And there's another factor, which is that me personally, my view of Madrid, I've been consistent for a long time on this, and my view of Madrid is that right now Madrid have a bad balance in their team. And they've recruited quite poorly, not in terms of quality, but in terms of type. When you look at their team, they had a certain style that was there, obviously before, between Kroos, Modric, Casemiro, that they've never really replaced. And they've put in a ton of luxury players up front. Jude Bellingham, Mbappe, Vini, maybe very, 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 very talented players. They are also not at all the same as they used to be. Not the same as Madrid used to be in terms of the profile. They've got a lot of passengers in a lot of plays and a lot of ways that they play. They're a very, very imbalanced and strange team. Okay? And I don't think that looking at individuals being successful or unsuccessful at Madrid, or how successful or not at this time, is particularly that enlightening. I've watched enough Camavinga that I rate him very, very highly, and so do I do Tchouaméni. I don't know, man. Like, they're a very weird team. When I watch Madrid, I generally don't go, you know what, Tchouaméni's shit, Camavinga's shit, that's why they're not winning. That's not how I look at them. When I watch them play, I'm going, you know, Mbappe takes half the plays off out of possession. Yeah, he scores a ton of goals, but like, this ain't a team. I don't see Madrid as a team. And I think that they lose more games and they've dropped more on the basis of guys like, you know, of just weird stuff. You know what I mean? They have a lot of big personalities, but those big personalities don't mesh in the same way that they used to. You know, one thing you'd have to add about, like, you could carry a couple passengers here and there at that Madrid team. Ronaldo could be a passenger sometimes, didn't want to work that hard out of possession here and there. But then you had guys like Benzema and such doing things like, anyway, there was a lot better balance. I think you have a wrong balance of ego there. I don't think the old Madrid squad would have fallen out with Xabi Alonso, you know, and done all that. Either way, look, we can all give tons and tons of opinions on it, for sure. But I don't think they're bad players. I really, really think that, you know, I really think that all in all, it's whatever. Now, for those asking about Camavinga's injuries, well, he's been missing with a toothache. And that's not an injury. I think that's fair enough. But Camavinga has actually missed the same number of games as Kobbie Mainoo via injury this year, which is not that many. It's 5. And it was the 4 of them were the first 4 games of the season, an injury he was carrying earlier on. So he's actually been quite fit this year. It's one of his best years fitness-wise in quite a long time. But you know, it's a strange team. Valverde, I agree. I think Valverde is the best player in that team personally, but they're not going to sell him. They're not going to sell him. But anyway, I just most of them in this team probably wouldn't get into Real's other team. You're totally right, but guess what? Nobody in world football gets into that Real Madrid team. Like, you just have to also bear in mind something when you look at Madrid. I think Madrid are the purest example around of the fall off of the top end of football. Because we had already fallen off. Madrid were the guys left in that period who were keeping the best of football alive. You know what I'm saying? Who gets into that team? You had Marcelo, maybe one of the best left backs of all time. You had Varane and Ramos, 2 of the best center backs of all time. Casemiro, Modric, Kroos, 3 of the best midfielders of all time. Bale, Benzema, Ronaldo. Tell me, in today's football world, forget up Madrid, who anywhere gets into that team? What center back right now is better than Varane and Ramos? What left back is better than Marcelo? What midfielders are better than Kroos, Modric, and Casemiro? In world football. In world football. Who gets into that 11? Nobody. Fucking nobody. It was the most insane 11 ever built. It genuinely was. It's just, there's nobody. And for me, it's just that, yeah, and then you had Pepe and Varane on the bench at one point, you know? You know, it's like, that. Who gets in? Gabriel is better than Varane. If you're not an Arsenal fan, then that is an extremely shameless take. If you are an Arsenal fan, then I expect an extremely shameless take. But Gabriel is better than Varane is... Okay, I'm going to move on. Rage bait. It's definitely rage bait. Definitely rage bait. No, I'm not saying all time. I'm not saying all time who gets into that team. I'm saying in today's football, because the football's declined. It just has. That was the last great team. And since that Madrid team has transitioned out, nobody's even come fucking close to that team. You know what I mean? in terms of quality overall. Nobody's come close. And yes, in La Liga, you had Messi, Neymar, Suarez at one point as the front three. That was a team that could compete with that level of football, right? I agreed. Busquets, Barcelona had a crazy team too that has also fallen off. I'm saying that, yes, you can't look at Madrid's team right now and say, oh yeah, they wouldn't get into that team. You know what I mean? You can't say that. They wouldn't. But that doesn't make them bad because it's all relative to the current level of football. And at the current level of football, there's nobody in the fucking world who gets into that team. So if that's the standard, then there's nothing we can do. Yes, I would agree. Harry Kane is maybe the only person that I would think, because Harry Kane is one of the greatest strikers of all time, for sure. And he's still doing it. So yeah, Harry Kane, that's a good shout. That's probably the only debatable one, because there was a couple years Benzema wasn't at his best either. Like, he had a couple of really amazing years and a couple where he wasn't like the guy, you know what I mean, either. So that's a good call though, Harry Kane. Harry Kane's probably the only current player at that level in all of football. I just don't see that anybody else is right now. You know, I think football's dropped off heavily. Haaland would make the bench, but I don't think he'd be complete enough for what they were doing back then. You know, not current Mo Salah. Salah 2 years ago, maybe even last year, maybe, but not current. But regardless, my point on it was that was probably the best assembled 11 of a decade, right? And before that, it was maybe that it was more of a debate between United and Madrid and Barcelona, and then before that, you may have had some Italian clubs, but nobody's getting in. So if I'm looking at Tchouaméni and Camavinga and saying, oh, they failed, they're crap, they're this and that, well, by what standard? Sorry, Bruno doesn't get in over Modric. No way. I'm sorry. Just doesn't. Bruno's an amazing player, and he would certainly, you know, as a creative player, he could be there, but he's not getting in. But I look at that and say, oh, how good are they actually? And you have to step back and step aside and go, all right, well, just because Madrid are not every year Champions League winning teams, and they're just an occasional Champions winning team now, doesn't mean that it's a bad team and that those are bad players. In fact, they're excellent players. They're top players, and they're really good. And I think Camavinga and Tchouaméni would both be two of the best center mids in the Premier League right now, which is a bit of a weak position, I will add. It's not like there's that many. That's part of the problem we're running into. You know, we're talking about Tonali and Elliot Anderson. I'm not necessarily believing people and saying, well, Tonali's better and Anderson are better than Camavinga and Tchouaméni. Are they? No, not for me. They might be around a similar level, but you have to bear in mind the ask that is asked of them, the standards that are there. I'm not a standards guy, but you have to realize that with Madrid, you lose a game and it's like pitchforks. We're not holding Tonali and Anderson to that standard. You're calling a bunch of people in that team flops because they'll lose one in a few games here or there, you know, on occasion. Newcastle are losing every week. Forest are losing every week. You know, the standards are very, very different. And so, of course, the narratives around these players get very, very different. Anyway, me personally, I'm a fan. And I think that we've seen stories from Matteo Moretto as well, we've seen stories that Madrid are looking to bring in like a Rodri. I will also say, again, I've been hearing for years that they want Enzo Fernandez to come into the team. And someone I was talking to recently still feels they'll try to do that. That they want to get those guys into the team. So there's gonna be, I think, there's gonna be somebody pushed out, and Madrid may want to sell. They may need to sell. They may be looking to cash in on somebody to move. And you can say, well, why would we take their leftovers? But that's transfers, man. That's transfers. That's transfers for me. So my feeling is that Andy is referring to one of those two, Tchouaméni or Camavinga. Could be somebody else. Somebody mentioned Frankie de Jong. Well, Personally, I think De Jong would be a disaster. Frankie disaster. Not because he's not a good player, of course, but again, you know, when we were looking at De Jong originally, I was going, who's he playing with? De Jong and Kobbie would be like two of the most pointless pairings in football. Not because they're both not individually very good players, but because why? Like, what's the point of that? Talk about duplicitous, you know? If Mainu becomes as good as he could be, it would be Frankie de Jong. There's no reason to have him, you know? There's no reason. Again, huge wages, turned us down for years. Probably not the type of player that we're going to go for. So I don't think it's Frankie de Jong. It doesn't make sense to me in any case, Frankie de Jong. If Frankie de Jong is our deep six, I'm taking the season off. He is a player that will not survive the Premier League. He will not. There's just no way. That's a player I do not think has the physical tools to handle, and it's too late. You know, if you had paired, if you had paired Frankie and like Prime Casemiro, maybe that would have made sense to me. Two different skill sets, but yeah, not for me. Not for me. I think again you lose massively out of possession in something like that. And Frankie just signed a new contract. Yeah, Fred did amazing. Yeah, De Jong, if you're gonna get De Jong, just forget spending all that money. Just get Adam Wharton. They're different players, but it's just, I don't know. Frankie de Jong would not survive as a 6 in this league. It's just not going to happen. True Valverde midfield for all their aura still get run over games. People overrate this. It's due to the front line being passengers. 2 CMs cannot do everything when 5 players are running them. That is exactly the point, bikers. And that's why I talk about the factor of why I don't think Madrid's midfield is even close to the issue. I think they have some really good players because their front line is lazy out of possession. The front line take whole plays off just walking, you know, gesturing to the crowd, walking, doing whatever. And you've been asking your midfielders to cover for everybody for an age. Well, I don't think that's one of the reasons, you know, because everybody loves the flash of the forwards at Madrid and the goals, but those players create so many issues for the midfield. They do. They create massive issues for the midfield. And then I think the midfield get all the blame because it's so easy to say, look at them. They can't deal with all the attack and they're getting run through. Yeah, I agree with that take. That's my take on Madrid when I watch them, is that their front line is so lazy, it makes it impossible for the rest of the team to function. That's the truth. That's how I see it anyway. Others might see it differently, but I don't know. I would guess that the stats back up the idea that, you know, Vinny is not making a lot of tackles. You know what I mean? And that, you know, that Mbappe is not making a lot of tackles. They're not doing a lot of defensive work, would be my guess. Personally, you know, I don't have the stats to say that, but I think that that's the biggest issue is those forwards, including Jude Bellingham, do not do a lot of work. I'm a Jude hater. I'm professed as a Jude hater. I think he's incredibly overrated. I think he's glorified McTominay, and McTominay was better than him last season, so maybe he's not even a glorified McTominay anymore. You know, that's where I'm at. But yeah, I'd be very, very excited about those players. Let's look at, we can look at some injuries because I get the concern over that. It's a valid. Camavinga has missed 2 games, 3 games, and then this one was over summer, okay? 2 games with a toothache. That's not an injury. Ankle problem. Last year, he did miss a lot last year. 23 games, a lot of days. And now a chunk of this is over summer, so that includes France. But yeah, that was not great. This one was okay. 50. Yeah, I mean, this season is better. If this season wasn't better, I would worry about it. But you know, it's something to consider. I think on average he's missed about 50 days a year, which isn't a little and it's not a lot. It's sort of right in the middle. But this season it's getting better rather than worse. So, you know, not terrible on that. I'm not particularly worried about that. All right. Here's Chouameni. He's missed 20 days, 40 days, 70 days. That was a fracture, huh? That he had. But again, it's a downward slope. And you also have to bear in mind something, right? 26 years old. I think Camavinga is a similar age. One thing you do have to bear in mind, Camavinga's only 20. Camavinga's only 23, all right? So one thing you do have to bear in mind with young players, all right, is that between the ages of 19 and 22, 18 and 22, I'm not particularly worried about injuries. A lot of young guys in that age bracket pick up muscle injuries as their bodies are still growing, frankly, until you're 25. As long as you're not having those big knee ligament injuries, ACL, MCL, I'm a little less worried about it, personally. I'm not worried about the injuries so much. As I say, could go for Kobbie Mainoo, right? You know, I mean, I tell you that, like, I mean, I don't know if it's the same people, but I've seen a lot of people. I have seen quite a number of people going, you know, Kobbie's injury is not a concern, but going Camavinga and his injuries are way too bad. But Kobbie missed 88 days, 83 days, and 26 days this season. So it's normal. Why? Because Kobbie's 20. During this age range, it is fairly ordinary to have muscular injuries and issues and things like that come up. So, and I have heard that as well. Madrid's fitness department and things like that have been poor. We've seen it at other clubs too. I would say this. If it's not an issue for the club, it's not an issue for me because I trust them on injuries at this point. I'm not worried about it. That's all I would say. But look, I'm not. If you were to ask, let me ask you guys. Let's poll this a little bit, okay? Let's poll this a little bit. Let's poll this. All right. If I were to ask, I'm going to do a few different polls because I'm actually quite curious. All right. Let's say we were to go for a first choice. Would everybody pick Anderson here? There was one other comment I want to raise while people are answering this poll. Andy Mitten said on his podcast, on their podcast as well, which I really did find this interesting because I think I know who this came from, and I've had these conversations before. But it was like, you know, despite the after the loss and things that, you know, United, the gist of what he said was that, you know, United know that they don't have the finished team, and they're saying, yeah, there's some players playing well now. But are they starters for a title-winning team? Now, we had this huge debate on this the other day. This is a very appropriately timed discussion, right? Because we had this big discussion about this, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, about the midfield and about some of these things. And Andy said the exact same thing from the club as I said. There's some players playing now, but the assumption that they are viewed as starters by the club is... for a title-winning team is wrong. Who do you think he's referring to there? Because I think it's rather obvious, to be honest, when he's saying that. There are players who are getting praise right now that the club are saying, well, yeah, but are they good enough to be title-winning players? And there's a lot of players who aren't. You know? And, you know, so anyway, it's just an interesting one, you know, but it's clear... I'm glad to hear it as well, because you like that the club don't get caught up in hype. You know what I mean? I don't want them getting caught up in hype and going, you know, and let's look at it in a few different examples. Talk about the center backs. Lissandro gets a lot of praise, deservedly, when he plays very well. Is he a center back who will be a part of a title-winning team? Nope. He hasn't been fit for ages. He can't rely on him for ages. He still has weaknesses. Maguire is the same. Let's not just pin it on, say, it's Kobbie Mainoo, right? There's a lot of players that this could fall under. Diogo Dalot, we know he's not going to... Come on. You know what I mean? Luke Shaw, the whole back line and midfield, right? We know no matter what they're getting praise right now, I doubt that they're feeling, yeah, those guys are going to be title-winning players. And that's why we're focusing on it. All right, so from this group, people would go Anderson, right? But let's do another one. Let's say you had 50 million, and these 50 million options, and these were your options. I'm not saying these are going to be the prices, but I am curious to see what people think here. I'm just curious. What are people's views these days on these? Because I'm surprised how down on these Madrid midfielders people are. I'm quite surprised how low on these Madrid midfielders people are, and I just don't know if it's just my perception or what. But if it was 50 million for these players, who would you pick as like your second option? It is really funny because I watch these guys and personally I've never watched Madrid and gone, it's the midfield. For me it's always the forwards and the way that they play in and out of possession that causes a lot of chain reactions through the team. But I see a lot of takes the other way around about them for sure. You don't want any of them? You want Fernandes? I mean, Mateus Fernandes is great. Mateus Fernandes is a very good player. Yeah, I'd like any of those as well. Camavinga 35%, Baleba 22, Tchouaméni 22, Gomez 21. All right, I mean, I think that's correct. I think that's correct. If Camavinga picks up injuries and I don't think it works quite that way, George. I don't disagree with you, but I don't quite think it works that way. Yes, the Premier League is different, but it's also about what are you being asked to do. You know, I think that correct. La Liga, and this is a good point, Vanzi. So this is another good point because I see people say this about La Liga a lot, and it kind of surprises me. But there was a chart a while ago put out, and it was quite interesting. And I don't know where it was. But it showed the transitions from leagues to the Premier Leagues. Okay? It showed transitions from the league to the Premier League. And all of them were bad. Bundesliga, bad. Serie A, bad. All of them were bad. There was only one where players went from that league to the Prem and actually their stats went up. And it was La Liga. And it's a bit of a strange one. It's a bit of a strange one because arguably you can see some reverse cases that don't make sense, right? Antony going from Premier League to Spain and doing well. But you have to bear in mind where they go to. I don't think that Antony going from the Premier League to Spain and doing well is because Spain is bad. I think it's because the bottom half of Spain is really bad, right? So you go from one of the top clubs in England to one of the lower clubs in Spain, and that's going to be no matter what, it's going to be easier, right? But it's the big difference when you're talking about players going from no, I promise this chart was Spain. I remember it quite explicitly. This chart was Spain. It was when you're going from a top club in Spain to a top club in England, it's quite different, you know, and vice versa. So I think that they're comparable at that front. The top end of La Liga is quite good. Atletico, Madrid, Barcelona, of course, they're quite good. It's just this huge gap between them and everybody else, you know, and it's the same when you look at the Bundesliga. You could get players from Bayern that work out. Look at Gravenberch. He was like a throwaway at Bayern. He just got 300,000 a week at Liverpool as their most important midfielder. True. I remember Gravenberch when Liverpool were looking at him, and when we were looking at him, people were like, oh, he's been shit at Bayern. He's a bad player. We shouldn't be going for him. He's a throwaway at Bayern, much like people are disregarding guys like Camavinga and Tchouaméni. Helped Liverpool win titles. Has been one of their best players. Is one of the better midfielders in the entire Premier League. Oops. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a little dangerous to throw it away like that, to just say that. Sometimes shit just happens. Sometimes it just doesn't work. You know, there's been examples of coming from Bayern that haven't worked, but usually that's an age thing. You know, usually that's an age situation. Buwadi is quite a lot like Camavinga. Yeah, he kind of is, actually. But I think that's more an age thing. I think we cast too many judgments in general is the main thing. I think we just cast too many judgments on players. Like, the reality is that we always try to find these patterns of like, don't buy X player from here, don't buy X player from here, because it hasn't worked out. But at the same time, like, maybe that's not a pattern. It's just we bought bad players. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably more likely that we just bought bad players more often than not. There are leagues I've got big doubts on, and places I have doubts on, but naturally as well. But I think that we draw too many conclusions sometimes on things. But yeah, I mean, look, I get it. I would still take Elliot Anderson. I think I'd take Elliot Anderson and Tonali over anybody right now as options. I think they're very, very clearly my two top options, my two favorite options. Yeah, Rodri to City worked out for them, right? From La Liga. I don't know. I mean, I get the wages factor for Camavinga and Tchouaméni, but what is that? What is that? Euros? What does that actually relate to? But also bear in mind, like, what is the going rate for Champions League winning players? Is giving them 200,000 a week a problem? Why? This is not that different from the price. Like that, obviously, I don't want to go and say, yeah, let's give him 400,000 a week pounds. That's an issue. We gave Casemiro 400,000. We gave Casemiro 400,000 at an old age. That's an issue. I don't think 200 to 250 would have been such an issue. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's definitely a bit of a different discussion as well. But look, Camavinga we've been following for years, pre-Madrid, long time, same as Tchouaméni. Rodri got time to develop. They still had Fernandinho. I mean, that's fine, but like, I guess my point here on that, which I don't disagree with you on, is that so we can't buy anybody because we don't have someone to develop them under. It's a tougher job. It's going to be tougher because we don't have that existing player who's already doing it for them to develop under, no matter where they come from. You know, Fernandinho joined for what? By the way, like, you know, Fernandinho joined City from Shakhtar, correct? So like, what? You know, it's just, you just buy, if they're good, they're good. If they're bad, they're bad. You know what I mean? So it's kind of whatever. But like, no matter what, we don't get that luxury. If we get Elliot Anderson in, he's not going to get the luxury either of getting to develop behind somebody else. You know, he's going to have to sink or swim. We get Tonali, it's going to be the same thing. You know, if we get any of these guys, it's going to be the same thing. So we have to live with that either way, no matter who we sign. But look, I'd still like I said, I'd still like Anderson and Tonali over anyone. Those are my two top choices in right now from what I've seen. But when you start to move into the next bracket, if Anderson has gone to City, if Tonali's impossible to get, I am taking Camavinga in a heartbeat. I would take him for this team. I would take him in a heartbeat. And I totally would. He's 23 years old, and people are acting like he's washed. He's still starting at one of the best clubs in football at 23 in a difficult situation. Like, yeah, I know their stats are nuts, and I watch them and I go, they are really, really good players. I think the balance at Madrid is so wrong right now. They're transitioning into a really weird, through and out of and into a weird period. But if you go into that next bracket, Camavinga is on the top of my list. I would absolutely love him. So let's see. Maybe that's who Andy Mitten was referring to. Maybe not. I guess we'll find out soon enough. But I will tell you that I do know that we've kept an eye on Camavinga, Tchouaméni, Barrios, Javi Guerra, and some others, and Casado as well in Spain. So I'd be very interested to see if any one of those has progressed further. If it's somebody totally different, cool, great. But those are names that I do know for some time that we've continued to keep those ears to the ground on. So I guess we'll see if they have moved on further. What if he comes and gets an ACL? I don't know. I mean, it could happen to anybody. Could happen to anybody. I don't think, here's the thing with Camavinga, right, CJ? I don't think it's 100 or a 0. Look, I don't think people have recognized yet just how bad our midfield is. Like, the physical flooring of our midfield would probably get overrun by a number of youth teams at this point. Okay? There is something to be said for just how much better we will simply get by improving that physical baseline and raises the floor. Camavinga will do that. At an absolute minimum, Camavinga would be a significantly better player in our midfield. That would raise the levels in that midfield from a physical standpoint up a large amount. Not nearly as a, and I'm not, and one could say, well, we have Ugarte could do that. No, because he's not even, Ugarte is just a different discussion. It's something very, there's just not the right player, not the right role, not the right profile. Again, somebody who we should have signed as someone to just run around pressing or something, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about physical flooring. Whoever comes in that raises that physical floor up will make us a lot better. And both Tchouaméni and Camavinga will do that. Yeah, you watch Joelinton, boss. Yeah, Joelinton's not good. You know what I mean? Like, Joelinton's not good. Joelinton is not a good player. You watch the guy when he gets into the final third and you go, how the hell is this guy like dominating our midfield? Everything, as soon as he hits the final third, it's like his brain switches off. You know? But he dominated our midfield. He dominated our midfield, you know? So it's like, whatever, you know? So that's it for me. I'm not saying that means you're lowering the standards. I think Camavinga could be amazing. But I think that at minimum, as long as we get a good physical, athletic midfielder who can eat ground, which is why I'm still good on Baleba as well, despite his difficult season, it's going to raise the levels. That's also why we need more than one to, balance out potential there. But I'm looking at worst, just make sure you raise the levels of that midfield physically and athletically to a floor. The floor's got to be at least decent, and then you can worry. Do they raise the ceiling? How much better can they be? How does it, how good are they outside of that? But let's at least take us from like an athletic 1 to an athletic 6. Then we can worry about the technical between the 6 and the 10 and whether we have it or not. But that's what I'm looking at. I'm still looking at Baleba and Camavinga for the same reasons, that they will give us that athletic bar raiser to 6. And at least that'll let us operate, the way that we need to operate, and then we can work around that from there. And maybe they'll be a lot better than expected, maybe not, but they will give us, there's one thing I'm sure they will give us, is that a physical and athletic flooring. With it's not that we shouldn't get good technical players.
Anderson would be perfect, or Onan R.
Yeah, agreed. That'd be a great matchup. It's not that technical players are bad. Sometimes I talk like technical players, we shouldn't sign technical players or something like that. It's not really the case. It's not that they're bad. It's just that our midfield's physical levels are so awful that like technical can work well, but if you have nothing to compete physically, you don't even get a chance to show the technical abilities in a team. So I'm saying it's much easier to predict a physical player will come in and exactly what they're going to do than a technical player comes into an environment where you're getting physically overrun. Let's fix one, and then the rest might shine on top of that. And that's, again, we need multiple signings, but at least one has to be a physical demon back there. Has to. Okay. All right, guys. That's it for today. We've found a way to yap through all this story. It's been good. I enjoyed the discussion with you guys. I think it's been great. I appreciate you all being here today. I hope you've enjoyed the chat. I hope you've enjoyed your Saturday. And I'll be back tomorrow for something or another to talk about this, okay? Yeah, no, look, I agreed. I'm not saying you only... Sometimes it sounds like I'm saying you should only get athletes. I'm more saying that we have none. So let's get at least one to make sure we have it, but let's sign two, and that way we can figure it out. But the Premier League is a weird one in that sense. But anyway, thank you all very much. I appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your evenings. Please do make sure to smash a like on the video, subscribe, turn notifications on. Help me out. I hope the ads aren't too bad. Again, it's not my fault. It's just what they do, and it's annoying to me as well. So I appreciate you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.